Hi, Christian here. I'm going to share 3 facts with you. After a 30-year period, the costs of housing rose by 290%. Education costs rose by 311%. And today, there are about 40,000 of our neighbors living on the streets of Los Angeles. Now I'm going to tell you why all these things are connected. To shelter about 75 of our homeless community members, the city government of Los Angeles plans to construct a temporary village of tiny homes in Wilmington. The village will be in a parking lot near the intersection of Figueroa Place and L Street, right across the street from Harbor College. The goal is to house people until they get connected with services and housing that will more permanently improve their lives. To be honest with you, the news of this made me feel conflicted. But I realized that these two developments, being next to each other, are actually apart and illustrate a larger problem. The real problem is our exploitive economic system. Remember, after 30 years, housing and education costs basically tripled. Meanwhile, the real wages of our workers and the middle class have only risen by 14%. Let me repeat that. Housing and education costs have tripled, and wages have not even risen by 1/5. The change in real wages are even worse for our friends and family in the bottom 10%. Black women in this group have seen wages increase by less than $1. Latino men have seen their wages go down by a couple of dimes. This is a shame and a failure. So it is not really a surprise that nowadays there will be a college next to a temporary village meant to get people off the streets. Many middle-class workers can't send children to college and buy a house without going into debt. And for the bottom 10%, the threat of homelessness is much closer than the dream of owning a house or getting a PhD will ever be for their lives. This is also a shame and a failure. But if you are one of these workers, this is not your fault. You and your families have worked hard, put in overtime, or even gotten a second job. Your missing wages, dollars that should be yours, have gone to executives at mega corporations, investment bankers, and the more than 600 billionaires in the United States. This wage and wealth inequality is the underlying cause of homelessness, and there are many potential solutions. The tiny home village proposed in Wilmington is a very small step, but it is in the right direction. But I think we can do much better than that, and we've actually done better very recently with a program called Project Roomkey. Project Roomkey temporarily houses formerly homeless people in hotels and motels. And there are on-site service providers that work with them, our brothers and sisters, to put them on a path to permanent housing and other supports. Expanding Project Roomkey is a much better short-term solution, I think, than temporary housing shelters or villages. But we also need to make housing more affordable in general. A long-term solution to this end is to decrease those wage and wealth gaps. We can do that by greatly expanding worker cooperatives in our communities. In a worker co-op, each worker gets one vote to determine the policies and actions of their business. Instead of a select few executives or boards of directors, the workers decide what to produce, how to produce, and how much money they get paid. And I ask you, if you and your coworkers got to determine all your wages, would you allow them to rise only 14% while housing costs nearly tripled? We can encourage the proliferation of worker co-ops, by demanding that our governments give stimulus, bonds, grants, and low-interest loans to people who want to start worker co-ops. In the past, our governments have given such benefits to capitalist corporations, and that has gotten us into this mess. The closure of supermarkets run by the Kroger company just because they don't want to pay at-risk workers higher wages is one concrete example of how corporations exploit our economic system. I assure you that if we start to advocate and demand democracy at our workplaces, we will reduce homelessness in a dignified and respectable way. This will take time and some very tough conversations, but if we maintain our solidarity, we can make housing and a livable wage a democratic guarantee.